Hi and welcome to another chess video with me. I'm Vidit Nd3 from Iceland, and we're going to go back to the Tata Steel Masters. And yeah, before we go on, let's have a look at the standings before the 9th round. So we're gonna put it on the screen, and notice that this is according to the starting rank. So Carlsen number 1, Mamedyarov number 2. And we see that Carlsen number 1 and Anand number 6 are leading the tournament with 5.5. Then we have Ding Liren and Nepomniachtchi with 5 points. In the 9th round, Carlsen had black against Shankland and Anand had black against Rapport, and both of those were rather uneventful games that ended in draws without really much of anything happening. So therefore we're going to look at one of the decisive games of the round, and it is between Nepomniachtchi with white and Vidit with the black pieces. So Ian, he opened with pawn to e4, so Jan Nepomniachtchi with the white pieces, and we have e5. We go for the Petroff after knight to f6, and I think this was perhaps a slight surprise for Nepomniachtchi, because this is not one of the regular openings that Vidit is playing. But nonetheless, he took on e5, d6, still waiting for someone to play the Cochrane gambit, which Topolov did once against Kramnik, but no takers yet. And Nepomniachtchi plays knight d3, which is the same thing that Carlsen played in one game against Caruana in the World Championship match. I'll link to that above if you want to see that game. Now we took on e4, queen to e2, pinning the knight, and queen e7, unpinning it. Knight to f4, the idea is to put it on d5, and knight to c6, the powerful move that Caruana played. And here the novelty pawn to c3 by Nepomniachtchi in the game between Carlsen and Caruana. Carlsen played knight d5, attacking the queen, but Caruana counterattacked with knight to d4, and we got a queenless middle game. And in the end, Caruana even came close to winning with the magical bishop h4 move, a very famous position now, which will probably go down in the history books, but that's another story, another video. And c3 was played in today's game. Now we did retreated with a knight. I thought knight f6 looks more natural, and a queen trade seems inevitable, but he went to c5, and it surprised me a bit, because white now plays d4 with tempo. You have to move the knight. Okay, he trades queens first, but now he moves the knight. And white also gets a little bit of a space advantage with the move pawn to d5. We also saw this in one of these Berlin lines, where white gets a slight space advantage with d5. It was the game between Nepomniachtchi and Kramnik. So perhaps this is a position type that Nepomniachtchi is quite happy with. I'll also link to that game, Nepomniachtchi between Kramnik, if you want to look at sort of a similar space advantage. But okay, knight is attacked, it goes to e5, and white gets his pieces out, plays knight to a3, and why does he put it on a3 and not on d2? Well, because from a3 you can go to b5. So after black develops, which it did, the light squared bishop, knight to b5 is a bit annoying, because you don't have a really good way to protect this pawn. If you move the rook, you have to worry about this one. But black castled here, allowing white to take on a7 with check. The knight went back, of course, and we'll note that white didn't have time to take on e5 at any stage, because we can take with a pawn, knight goes to b5, and now we just take on d5. We have the bishop pair, and this is not an isolated pawn, we can always protect it. And I say take on e5 because after knight b5, which was played, black has knight to d3, which forces white to give up the bishop pair, as otherwise this guy would fall, so white has to take. And now he plays a4. If he moves the knight, then perhaps black can play here and hit 2 pawns, this one and this one. So a4 was played, and he still can play bishop to e4, but Nepo wasn't too worried about that. He thought he would get nice play, and Vidit agreed, and he went for another pawn. He played bishop to c4, and the only way to defend this pawn on d5 is to castle or to play rook d1. Nepo went with long castling, but in both cases black has bishop to b3 with simple double attack on the pawn and the rook. So the rook naturally moves and bishop takes a4. So now we have equal material, but black is a little underdeveloped. He still hasn't gotten this bishop out, which means this is still unconnected with the other rook, and this guy is getting it's getting bothered a bit here. Okay, black started by getting the bishop out, bishop to e7, but now b3, and this bishop doesn't have a lot of prospects at the moment. It went all the way back to e8. Maybe he should have gone to d7, but okay, he went all the way back to e8, and now rook a2. So we see that white is eyeing the opportunity to maybe move the king, move the other rook over, and then simply just checkmate the king on a8. So, well, black first plays bishop to f6, and this might be one of the reasons why the bishop is on e8, because black can always escape with the king to d7. White doesn't want to give up double pawns on the d file, so he plays rook to d1, and black feeling slightly cramped with the space advantage and the prospects of white doing something on the a file, decides to take on d4. He gives up the bishop pair, but he feels like the presence of opposite colored bishops should give him good chances. Now first white plays here c4. He would love to swing the rook over to the a file, but it's of course covered by the bishop at the moment, so first he fortifies his pawns, but he's also maybe thinking about advancing them on the queen side, because he has some pressure against the king on this diagonal, and once you move a pawn to c5, you're putting some pressure on the pawns on c7 and d6. Here black plays b6, which I think Nepo thought was maybe not necessary, and it does give white a target after b4. He's getting ready to open things up with c5. Another move here, and sort of black isn't really making any like a blunder or a big mistake, but okay, he plays king b7. Maybe he should get some pieces into the game. Rook h to e8, and if white plays as in the game with c5, he can maybe play bishop b5 and get active. And now you're threatening maybe to give a check and give another check on e2 and maybe trade off some pieces, and then it's going to be a lot easier to rely on the opposite colored bishops and go for the draw. Instead, king b7, and now c5 is remarkably strong. Well, first of all, c6 is threatened, so we have to do something. Black took on c5, and b takes e5. And again we have this threat, and black's problem is that if you take on c5, which he did not do, then rook b2 check is a very simple and effective move. You don't want to go to the a file, because we have the b file under control, and all we need to do is to swing this guy over, maybe something like this, and the black king is in big trouble. And if you go to c8, the simple move rook to c4. Next we will take this guy, and this one is coming under attack as well. Very, very shaky, probably just lost for black. So he tried to undermine here with, exchange some pawns with c6, but this allows c takes b6, and black took on d5 here, and he can't take a pawn. He would love to, but if king takes The move bishop e3 is fantastically strong here. And you're just in trouble. If you try to even block the diagonal with c5, I still play rook b4, and we have this pin, lovely pin, and if the king moves, you're just getting mated really quickly. And yeah, the other option is to interpose, but it's still pinned, so rook a to b2 wins the bishop. So after bishop e3, it's actually game over. So he took on d5, still bishop e3, and again we can't take. So rook a8 was played, but now rook a7 check, and still you can't take the pawn. Well, just a quick look, rook a4 check, followed by taking this one. So black took on a7, but this gives white a protected pass pawn. Still can't take because rook takes, and I take the bishop. So bishop to c6, and now rook g4. Both defending the pawn and attacking something, trying to provoke a weakness for black on the king side, but black refuses, plays rook to g8, and now white brings the king. So if this pawn was, well, somewhere else, maybe b2, a3, c3, whatever, way down the board, this would be a draw, but, or at least very drawish, but the pawn on a7 is very dangerous and is giving black some big problems. Now there are like two ways that black can sort of try to defend here, and both of them are horribly passive. In the game he played the king c7. The other way is to, yeah, okay, we stay with the king on a8, but I think eventually white should be able to break that. He would love to put a bishop, a rook on b8, but to do that you would have to get the bishop to the diagonal to cover the b8 square, and to do that you would have to get the king somehow to protect this pawn. See, I mean, seems to me it should be possible. It looks, well, I'm not sure, because once you go to a6, well, maybe I can get the king to a6, rook to b6, or rook on the b file. But it looks very passive, and black can also has to worry about the king side as well. The other way to defend, we will see after what happened in the game, which was king c7, rook b4, bishop b7, bishop b6 check. In the game, Vidit played king c6, but he can maybe try to defend with king d7, after bishop to a5 to play bishop to a8. Here the rook gets to b8, but we can cover the rook on the 8th rank with the king. But the white can sort of keep this tension, just keep the rook on b8, it's firmly protected. And then advance on the king side and attack the pawns there with the help of the king and the bishop. And I think white should be able to do that. So for instance, like move like bishop c3. Okay, already attacking a pawn. Next we'll play bishop here. This will keep all the pieces passive. The king is kind of stuck there. And yeah, I think white should be able to win this. Although I haven't like thoroughly studied this. It's just a feeling. But in the game after king c6, that's actually, yeah, the final mistake, because after bishop to a5, black is just totally stuck. Rook b6 is coming. And once I hit you with rook b6, I will hit you with a discovery next move and pick up whichever pawn I please here, and which pawn is undefended. And if you move the bishop, the rook will land on b8, and since black can't protect the rook, it's simply deadly and black will lose material. So Vidit resigned the game here. So a good win for Nepo, who yeah, he was one of only 2 players to win in this round. The other was Fedoshev, who is not contending in this tournament. So now we have 3 leaders, Anand, Carlsen and Vidit. And I believe Carlsen and Anand will play tomorrow. And if that's the case, probably Carlsen has the white pieces, so that could be yeah, a very crucial game for the tournament. And yep, I'm signing out. I'll see you next time. As always, subscribe if you haven't, another video up there, and see you later. Bye bye.